Thanks for staying with us for today's Business Matters. We have, of course, Don Ma here with us. Don, good to see you. How's it going?
Good to see you as well. I'm going well. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Tell us what's going on in the business world.
Okay, let me start off with some updates on clean energy. The Biden administration has announced a $428 million grant for clean energy projects, and this is to help communities that once relied on coal. Now, the funds will be to build or expand battery manufacturing and recycling plants, as well as other clean energy manufacturing. Will be in areas that have been hit hard by recent closures of coal mines and power plants. So the Biden administration has pledged to support these communities since the U.S. has been reducing its reliance on burning coal to generate power. There are 14 projects that span a dozen states, including Kentucky, Utah, West Virginia, Texas, and Pennsylvania. Now, Honda is recalling more than 720,000 vehicles in the U.S. over concerns that a high-pressure fuel pump may crack and leak fuel, and this is a fire risk, of course. The recall includes certain Accord CR-V hybrid and Honda Civic models from years 2023 to 2025. Dealers will inspect and replace the high-pressure fuel pump as necessary for free. Honda didn't respond to a request for comment, however. Now, there's rules coming soon that will ban some U.S. investments into Chinese artificial intelligence development. The federal government says the rules are under final review, and the rules come from an executive order signed by President Biden in August 2023. It aims to keep American investors from aiding the Chinese Communist Party's military. Related investments that are not specifically prohibited will still require government notification. Now, exceptions to the ban include publicly traded securities, certain limited partnership investments, and certain syndicated debt financings. And next, the head of leading computer chip equipment maker ASML says he expects 2026 will be a growth year. Now, the remarks come a week after ASML shook markets after warning of lower growth in 2025. ASML still expects sales growth, but at a slower pace. The company said apart from chips related to AI, electronics markets are pretty weak. So the Dutch company's CEO says the U.S. will continue to push for further restrictions on its exports to China. ASML's biggest customer, TSMC of Taiwan, makes chips for NVIDIA and is building several new factories. Meanwhile, U.S. taxpayers will be able to shield more money from taxes on future returns. Today, the Internal Revenue Service announced its annual inflation adjustment for 2025. Taxpayers will once again see higher standard deductions, but smaller ones than recent years. For single taxpayers and married individuals filing separately in tax year 2025, the standard deduction is rising to $15,000. That's up $400 from 2024. For couples who file jointly, that standard deduction will be $30,000 for 2025. This is an $800 jump from the year prior. The increases announced are less than those seen in recent years. A U.S. Geological Survey study has revealed between 5 and 19 million tons of lithium under southwestern Arkansas. The reserves could potentially meet 9 times the projected demand for car batteries worldwide. Federal and state researchers used a combination of water testing and machine learning to analyze samples from the Smackover Formation. The study's novel methodology made it possible to quantify the amount of lithium present in brines. The Smackover Formation extends under parts of Arkansas, Louisiana, Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, and Florida. The porous limestone dates back to the Jurassic period and is known for its rich deposits of oil and bromine. In recent years, the formation has also drawn attention for potential lithium in its salty waters. General Motors on track for record earnings in 2024. The automaker reported stronger than expected third quarter earnings with $3.4 billion in profit. Revenue rose more than 10% to nearly $49 billion. That's way more than forecasts projected, considering the costly United Auto Workers Union strike last year. GM has raised its earnings outlook for the rest of the year as well. Now, for the third time this year, GE Aerospace has raised its full-year profit outlook, but in the same breath, the company is forecasting a double-digit decline in its LEAP jet engine deliveries. LEAP engines power Airbus and Boeing narrow-body jets. GE Aerospace said material availability and supplier issues continue to cause disruptions, and this has impacted production and delivery of equipment and services. Investors are responding with pessimism. Shares in GE Aerospace fell 9% this afternoon. The lack of new plane production has increased demand for aftermarket services, which has helped GE Aerospace offset reduced shipments and increase its profits. Now, workers near the Boeing 737 plant are picketing ahead of tomorrow's crucial vote. Some voiced pessimism about the company's new contract proposal. Take a listen.
Boeing workers striking outside the planemaker's 737 factory near Seattle on Monday were skeptical about a new contract offer that includes a 35% pay raise, casting doubt on whether a crucial vote this week will end a costly 5-week standoff. Boeing says it looks forward to its employees voting on the proposal on Wednesday. However, some of the 33,000 workers on strike were pessimistic.
I have seen the new contract. It's looking better, but it's it's not quite there. I'm kind of, if it passes, I'm okay, but I don't think it's gonna pass.
I think it's a decent contract, but I think it's not what we asked for, and I feel like the contract, it's not gonna push the company forward for longevity in the long run.
The striking workers make up 95% of the company's machinists. The union has been seeking a 40% pay hike and a pension workers lost in 2014. Boeing's latest offer on Saturday includes a $7,000 ratification bonus, reinstated incentive plan, and enhanced contributions to workers' 401ks. But the proposed pay rise falls short at 35%. The union's leaders caught flack from members for agreeing to an earlier proposal that its members opposed. It's not explicitly endorsed the company's latest offer, only telling members over the weekend it was worthy of your consideration. Analysts estimate the wage hikes may cost Boeing $1 billion or more. And even if union members accept the new contract, the plane maker faces the challenge of ramping up production to pre-strike levels once workers return. The strike has halted production of Boeing's best-selling 737 MAX jets as well as 2 of its wide-body models. Company shares rose 3% on Monday on hopes for an agreement. Wednesday's vote coincides with Boeing's third-quarter results, which are expected to show a significant loss.
And we're seeing a shift toward open banking and increased competition. The government's Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or CFPB, has unveiled the Personal Financial Data Rights Rule. This will allow consumers to control and share their own data when shopping for financial services. The rule requires banks, credit card issuers, and other financial service providers to unlock an individual's personal financial data and to transfer it to another provider at the consumer's request for free. The CFPB said this gives consumers greater rights, privacy, and security over their personal financial data. The banking lobby is criticizing the rule, warning that it could jeopardize consumer data security and exceed the agency's legal authority. Walt Disney just announced that James Gorman will serve as its next chairman of the board starting next year, and that a new CEO will be appointed in 2026. Here are the details on that.
Walt Disney has named former Morgan Stanley CEO James Gorman as chairman and said it would appoint a new CEO in early 2026. The announcement sets the stage for succession at the storied media and entertainment company. Gorman served as CEO of Morgan Stanley for 14 years and orchestrated a succession plan there in which all 3 candidates remained with the company. He'll become chairman of the Disney board in January after he steps down as executive chairman of Morgan Stanley. Since August, he has been leading the committee looking for a successor to Bob Iger, who returned as the company's CEO in 2022 to replace his hand-picked successor, Bob Chapek. Iger is credited with building out Disney's media empire, including through the high-profile acquisitions of Pixar, Marvel, and Star Wars, and has seen his retirement date extended 5 times. Iger had initially planned to stay for 2 years after coming out of retirement, but agreed to extend his tenure through 2026. Shares of Disney were down fractionally in Monday morning trading.
The International Monetary Fund has upgraded its economic outlook for the United States this year. At the same time, it lowered its expectations for growth in Europe and in China.
The battle against inflation is almost won. After peaking at 9.4% year-on-year in the third quarter of 2022, we now project headline inflation will fall to 3.5% by the end of next year. In most countries, inflation is now hovering close to central bank targets. Now, inflation came down while the global economy remained resilient.
U.S. growth has been led by strong consumer spending and healthy gains in inflation-adjusted wages, but the IMF expects the U.S. economy to decelerate next year with the new presidential administration and Congress in place. China's economic growth is expected to slow from last year, still hobbled by a collapsing housing market and weak consumer confidence. As for the 20 European countries that share the euro collectively, they're expected to see minor growth this year.
Now, despite the good news on inflation, risks are now tilted to the downside. These downside risks include an escalation in regional conflicts, especially in the Middle East, which could pose serious risks for commodity markets. Policy shifts toward undesirable trade and industrial policies could also significantly lower output. A sharp reduction in migration into advanced economies, which can unwind some of the supply gains that helped ease inflation in recent quarters. This could trigger an abrupt tightening of global financial conditions that would further depress output.
The IMF also warned that lowering borrowing costs aids the world's economies, but the need to contain enormous government deficits will likely put a brake on growth. Next, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said that Germany needs to boost investment, attract skilled workers, and reduce red tape. It's part of his plan to revive growth in the country's economy. Germany's economy is expected to shrink for the second straight year. Scholz blamed inflation, high interest rates, and geopolitical conflicts. He said the European Union caused delays in investment with too much red tape and urged Brussels to take quick action. Scholz stressed the importance of bringing more skilled workers into the job market and for more flexibility with working hours and the pension age. Drivers in the EU aren't picking a lane yet when it comes to electric or gas-powered cars. Instead, they're cruising in both lanes. Hybrid electric vehicle sales have increased in recent months, and for the first time, hybrids beat out gas-powered cars as the top new car seller in the EU. And this was for the month of September. The data was shared by the European Automobile Manufacturing Association. Fully electric and plug-in hybrid car sales have slowed. This is in part due to different policies on incentives among European countries, while regulators recently imposed hefty tariffs on cheap Chinese-made EVs to try to keep them out of the market. And there's a new iPhone feature that hides website ads, and those ads appear on the web page as well. French trade associations are calling it an existential threat to the online advertising model. Here's that story.
Distraction Control, a new iPhone feature that hides web page ads.
Once you tap an item to hide, they just wisp away, like Thanos snapped his fingers.
It's giving a headache to multiple French trade groups. They want Apple to suspend the feature, calling it an existential threat to the online advertising model.
Some businesses are going to get affected more than others, and some businesses are going to go completely out of business because that's what happens whenever you have changes like this. But existential to online advertising, I don't know if that's the correct terminology.
Ad agency owner Rene Lacade says many firms will be fine if they simply move their ads to another platform, such as social media and YouTube. But the businesses that could be hurt are the websites themselves.
When you take away all of their ad revenue and all the actual advertisers move their money off of the websites, these websites fail. And there's thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of these businesses.
The French trade groups say people could stop subscribing to websites as well. Many sites make visitors choose between a paid ad-free browsing experience or a free experience with ads. The trade groups say they're actively considering all available legal resources as they urge Apple to suspend distraction control.
Meanwhile, Target is slashing prices on thousands of items ahead of the holiday shopping season. The retailer will cut prices on more than 2,000 home goods, beauty products, toys, and food and beverage items. Some prices have already dropped, and the discounting will continue through December. This is the second time this year that Target has cut prices in an attempt to lure in inflation-worried shoppers. In May, Target planned to slash prices on 5,000 items, but surpassed that number, cutting prices on 8,000 items. The discounts have helped boost customer spending after a string of dreadful quarters for the company. Meanwhile, the FAA says it's finalizing training and pilot certification rules for flying air taxis. The regulations help clear a major hurdle for the development of electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. FAA Administrator Mike Whitaker praised the 15-month-long process today at a conference in Las Vegas. Airlines and others are looking at battery-powered aircraft that can take off and land vertically. Transportation services would allow travelers to beat traffic on their way to airports on other short trips. Delta Airlines has invested $60 million in Joby Aviation. The partnership aims to offer air taxis in New York and Los Angeles within a few years. Toyota also invested $500 million in Joby earlier this month. All right, quickly before we go here, choppy session today on Wall Street. Tech-heavy NASDAQ gained ground here at the close. Almost half of the S&P sectors was in positive territory, with the consumer staple leading the pack. So investors are waiting for more earnings to assess the health of the American companies. Overall, broader technology sector was up. Microsoft jumped. The next few weeks are likely to be a bit volatile for equity markets because investors will be looking at company earnings for sure, as well as fresh economic data and results of the U.S. election, and that's a big one. They're also paying close attention to the central bank meeting next month. Traders pricing in about a 91% chance of a 25 basis point interest rate cut in November. All right, that's all happening today on Business Matters. Back to you.
Don, thank you. Great report as always. You know what I find really appealing is that new iPhone feature. I don't know about you, but I cannot stand those pop-up ads on websites.
Yeah, I know. I'm in the same boat as you, but I gotta tell you a secret here. That feature is not an end-all for ads, because if they change the position of those ads, they could still show up on your phone. So it only works on static ads in the same position that don't change or move.
Well, you know what? As a consumer, I feel like having less ads is always a win.
All right.
So we'll see how it works out, but I hope Apple keeps the feature.
Yeah, I think they will.
All right. Thank you, Don. I'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.